Hey, folks, this is my second live on YouTube. Thought I'd jump in here and just talk for a few minutes. Hopefully, some of you will be up. Mr. Gattenby, top of the evening to you. Waiting for Colin Janke to show up here, too. Great to have you on. I'm doing this virtual bar night so that people can chat and ask me questions. I'm a former KC-135 pilot, veteran of 4 wars, and author of the book Tankwr Pilot, host of the Lessons from the Cockpit show, founder of Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. You can see one right here, this KC-135 that I drew. And Eric, thanks for joining, brother. I hope you're feeling better. Please let me know, brother, if you're doing better, okay? Because I know you have been under the weather. And I'm trying to get my webcam to come up. And good to hear, Eric. I'm trying to get my webcam to come up, but this is only the second one I've ever done. So I'm doing off the camera that's on my laptop here. And I just want to talk aviation, man. Whatever questions you have, I've got a few things I want to talk about. And we'll go from there. Let me start. F-47, next generation air dominance. R.C. Thompson, welcome. I want to talk about the next generation air dominance. But folks, I think it's a great idea. I think the airplane's going to be fantastic. Can't believe that Boeing won with their past performance. But you know what? This is going to be really interesting to see what this thing looks like. For those of you who are subscribers to my podcast, Lessons from the Cockpit, go listen to episode 106, where I'm talking to Shrek and Glibby, because I asked them, hey, we're hearing about the F-47, all these kinds of things. They both flew F-35s, and I asked them the question, what would you want if you were a designer for a day in the 6th gen fighter? And they both kind of went into some fairly long discussion about what they would put in it, which I found really fascinating. But I have a concern, and that concern is we have an air mobility gap, and a rather large one. This past weekend, I was speaking at the Air Mobility Command Museum at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Got to sit in a KC-10, got a little emotional sitting in the KC-135 because that was my airplane. And folks, we've got an issue that needs to be addressed, and that is moving the force into a theater. General Mike Minahan, who used to be the AMC commander, wrote about this in an article saying, I think he said it took 73 C-17 missions to move a Patriot battery into the Middle East. 73. And my first thought was, what's going wrong? What's happening that it takes that? I don't know. I do know retiring the KC-10s as early as we did I think was a mistake. The KC-10 was the airplane that we have used ever since it came into the Air Force fleet as the people, parts, and flying iron mover. When we would do what's called coronets, those coronets were usually done with the KC-10. You'd have 4 fighters on each of the KC-10s, sometimes 6. You could have most of their maintenance package with all of their stuff on the cargo floor of the KC-10, and they'd take off from Seymour Johnson and fly literally to Saudi Arabia. They would have KC-135s that would refuel them on their way over to force extend them, and we don't have that now. You can't load the floor of the KC-46 like you can the DC-10. From what I understand, the floor won't take that kind of cargo or weight. The other thing too is KC-46 still has airplanes that it cannot refuel, the A-10 being one of them. So I want you to think about that. An airplane that we can use not only for close air support, but maritime air support, nugging down all of these go fast boats from Iran and the Houthis, have to be force extended with the KC-135. There's still some boom issues with the KC-46. And I think a lot of you know there has been issues with the KC-46. It has not panned out the way it's supposed to. And if I'm not mistaken, the last 9 international KC-135 or tanker replacement competitions internationally have all been won by one airplane, the A330 Airbus. Now, the Aussies have been very smart. They have boom, they have centerline drogue, wingtip drogues, and the airplane is air refuelable. Folks, you have no idea how easy creating an air refueling plan is when you have that capability of an air refuelable tanker that can do probe and drogue and boom refuelings within just a couple minutes. KC-10 to go from the drogue out refueling probe and drogue fighters to switching to the boom took 2 minutes. 2 minutes. That's all it took. And again, the ability to carry that cargo. They have the remote vision system 2.0. I've actually flown the simulator. It is fabulous, but I don't think they've put it on any airplane yet. Mark Pro, welcome. Tanker guy, call sign Sluggo here. Welcome to this virtual bar night. Here's the other thing. We're going to probably have to use our international partners to probably move our forces into a region. But I saw in the news recently the KC-10s that are in the boneyard are being put up for sale. They may be sold to companies like Omega, which has been doing commercial air refueling for a long time. I know their president very well, Tom Swiderick, because he was stationed with me at Kadena. And Ulick Machiavetti, who owns the company, runs the company. But I also know the folks from Matria that are in Southern California that have KC-135s. Their KC-135s have wingtip pods for drogue refuelings and centerline boom. Not air refuelable, but at least I've got drogue and boom on the same airplane. In the 2004 timeframe, during the KCX competition, I actually got to brief both Airbus and Northrop Grumman. They were teamed together, and a couple weeks later, briefed Boeing. Alls I did was change the name on the slides, and I only had 8 slides. And I went through everything I could think of when it came to air refueling, lessons learned, just coming out of Afghanistan, coming out of Iraq, and talking to these 3 companies. I was on my feet in Washington, D.C., in Roslyn at their headquarters in Washington, D.C., for Boeing and for EADS, Northrop Grumman, for 6 hours. I only had 8 slides, on my feet for 6 hours, just going through everything I could think of, from training and education to the equipment that had to be on the airplane, to future equipment that had to be on the airplane that I felt was important, because now we have digital and network battlefields. And every lesson learned that I could think of, from Desert Storm, Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq. 6 hours on my feet in a suit. I wore a suit. I was still on active duty. Went up there on my own time and did this, and briefed some absolutely fabulous people at Boeing, good friends at Boeing, good friends at EADS, and of course of Northrop Grumman. 3 3-star generals that I knew very well. 2 of them I had worked for. And again, just had a great time briefing them. Next week, I will be in Las Vegas, Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday night. I am going to be speaking Monday night or Tuesday night, excuse me, at what's called the Air Refueling Systems Advisory Group. It's a group of 26 nations that all have air refueling assets, that they get together every year and discuss air refueling. And it's always great to meet, the Aussies and the Saudis, the Omanis, everybody that has tankers are all there. And of course, they have an industry floor, which is really cool, folks, because you get to see all of the latest technology that are going into tankers. I mentioned networking, and that was one of the things that we learned in Afghanistan was we couldn't talk to airplanes on opposite sides of Afghanistan. UHF radios and VHF radios didn't have that big a footprint. And so we had to put a pallet on KC-135s. It was called ROBE, Roll On Battlefield. What did the E stand for? I can't remember. Anyway, it was basically a router that we could use to extend the UHF VHF communication footprint. But folks, now we've got network weapons. Now we have networked intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance aircraft that are gathering all kinds of data. And believe it or not, the KC-46 has that capability in it, this networking routing system. So tankers now are some of the first airplanes to go over, and they need to be strategically placed so that we can have the network, electronic data link, and other forms of communication that we need on a battlefield. And sure enough, Boeing put that in their airplanes. So I had the last slide. It was Sluggo's dream tanker. And of course, I went through what I thought, okay, if we're going to have a dream tanker and I'm the guy that's going to build it, here's what I'd have to have in it. First thing is it had to have a boom and it had to have a drogue. Second thing, had to be air refuelable. Third thing, had to be networked. Fourth thing, had to have a cargo floor that you can put pallets of cargo on in case you're moving airplanes or even maintenance folks or even some of our sister services or international partners be able to move their cargo. Also, that floor has got to be reconfigurable. By that, I mean, I can make it into an airliner. I can make it into a cargo plane. I can make it into both cargo and airliner, or more importantly, I can make it into aeromedical evacuation. The great thing about having a tanker, a refuelable tanker, as an aeromedical evacuation airplane to move injured troops back to the States is you don't have to land. Coming out of the Middle East, you'll be refueled somewhere around England on the way over to Walter Reed. Most of the hospitals that we took people to were in the Washington, D.C. area. Some went down to San Antonio, Texas, to the burn unit down there too. But that's how the airplane needed to be configured. I'll be honest with you. I told those companies, do not take the boom operator out of the back of the airplane. Let the boom operator, he or she, sit in a chair or on her or his belly. And not like in the KC-135 or the KC-10. What do they do? Well, Mark, we've got this really cool camera system that works really well, and the KDC-10s from the Dutch, have this, and that's just another thing that can break. It really is. It's just as easy just to open the window and watch what's going on behind you. But I got overruled. Anyway, let's see what else was on the tanker. The communication suite had to be HF radio, UHF radio, VHF, and data link. There is a lot of information that is shared on link 16, the data link, that show threats, that show where bad guy forces are, good guy forces are, and you can also communicate through it. Now, the KC-46 has this stuff, which is good. They just got to get all the bugs worked out of this thing. And folks, I have no doubt that Boeing will produce just a fantastic airplane. All right. But right now there's some things that they need to fix, as we all know. The A330, it's doing pretty good, folks. It's doing good. Has a bigger wingspan than the KC-46. That's one of the issues that people told me there was with choosing that airplane, because it's got a kind of a wide wingspan. Let me explain why that's so important. We call it MOG, maximum on ground. To give you an idea, a KC-10 required, I think it was 106,000 square feet to park. The KC-135, if I remember, was 68,000 square feet. Again, because of the size of the airplanes and the wingspan. There are not a lot of fighter bases that you can go to that have the ability to park a lot of KC-135s, KC-10s, A330 type of tankers on the airfield. The other problem that you have is I am very proud of the fact that I ran a Middle Eastern country out of jet fuel. The United Arab Emirates was not capable of producing the amount of jet fuel that we were using at Al Dhafra. We were using 1.8 million gallons of jet fuel a day with 40 KC-10 sorties. I take that back. 39 KC-10 sorties, 38 to 39 sorties. Okay. They always kept one as a spare. They were taking off with 320,000 pound fuel loads. They burned 20,000 pounds an hour. And I want all of you to understand, you don't block off the gas that you're going to offload. All of the gas in the KC-135, the KC-10, the A330 is all usable, either through the engines to fly the airplane or out the back through the boom or the drogues. You just have to manage the fuel panel and the fuel load in the tanks properly. There was a formula for doing it in the KC-135. I am not a math major, and so I just looked down at the trim wheel, and there's a zero trim spot, and if that little needle moved, I knew that I needed to drain forward more, less in the back, or vice versa, so that thing wouldn't budge. But those are some of the things that I said we needed to have in a tanker. And right now, we don't have enough of those kinds of tankers. And um, that is a real problem, particularly when you have to deal with the tyranny of distance in the Pacific. Now, my good friend Eric Gattenby, that's on here, can talk about this. He used to be a submariner. The Pacific Ocean is freaking huge. And you only have certain bases that you can put tankers at and operate at what we call a high ops tempo. And those are prepared military bases or international airports because you don't have enough gas. Believe it or not, Prince Sultan, the base that we were using in Riyadh, had 15 million gallon fuel tanks for storage that hadn't been used in probably like 2 decades, that we had civil engineers come in and clean out, and we needed them. And we were filling them every 3 days. 284 8,500 gallon fuel trucks would line up 4 kilometer long line every 3 days to come on Prince Sultan and fill those tanks back up. And the war went for 26 days, to give you an idea. A lot of gas. Mike Jam, welcome. Call sign Sluggo here. Carbon Studios. It was my honor to serve. My good buddy Eric Gattenby, you see here, was also a submariner in the Navy. Mike Jam, you got, my friend flew the fuel boom over Iraq and refueled the F-117s for the first time in combat. Out of Plattsburgh, New York, guys in black suits came over and said, "You're about to see something nobody has seen." Mike Jam, I was one of those guys. I refueled my first F-117 two-ship. I think it was November of 1990. I was read into the program. The air refueling unclassified nickname for refueling the F-117 Nighthawks was Busy Spartan. And so this piece of paper was laid down in front of me, which was a non-disclosure agreement. It had Busy Spartan written across the top of it. And that was the unclassified nickname for the air refueling program for the F-117s. Kay Roberts, evening from Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us. So we would fly as 3-ship tanker cells of KC-135s, and we would go south from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And when you flew over the middle of the desert, it was the weirdest thing. There was all these little lights on the ground. And what freaked you out was there was a lot of those little lights. And so there wasn't a discernible horizon, if you know what I mean, until you got away from the city lights. And then when you're out over the desert, you just see these things, and they were moving. And I'm like, what in the world is this? So when I got back to King Khalid in Riyadh, hi, Michelle. Thanks. From Whidbey Island. Ooh, man, do I have a lot of questions for you. Are you associated with the EAF 18 Growler program by chance? Anyway, because Michelle, that's a fascinating airplane. Anyway, back to the F-117 missions. They were all named after storms. Lightning, thunder, storm. That was the F-117's call signs during the war. Underneath the loud airplanes, Michelle. Yeah, I can understand. Going to burner. The very first time I went down to Khamis, which is in southwestern Saudi Arabia, we went over the desert. And as we got away from the city lights, I still saw all of these lights moving out in the desert. I'm like going, what the heck is this? And you know what it was? And this is what the Saudi guy told me. You can take the Bedouin out of the desert, but not the desert out of the Bedouin. It was Datsun King Cab trucks that had families in it in convoys, and they'd go out in the middle of the desert in the December, January timeframe when it was nice and cool because you could see the stars and the galaxies and the Milky Way. And they would set up their fires and cook their lamb. And it was a rice dish. I can't remember the name of it. Rice and peas and corn and lamb meat and all these kinds of things. And of course, their tea, their chai. And what we were seeing was the Datsun King Cab trucks going over the sand dunes and stuff like that as we flew down to the south. But it's just barren. The best movie I've ever seen that replicates the deserts of Saudi Arabia are the last two recent Dune movies. It looks just like that. I mean, it's just crazy. So I was sitting in the jump seat. Major John Smallwood was the pilot. He's an instructor pilot, and he and I had been stationed at Pease Air Force Base, so we knew each other very well. And he reached around and had this smile on his face. He had this big mustache. We all grew big mustaches. And he looks around me, and he taps me on the knee like this, and he points like this. And so I leaned, he moved his seat up, and I leaned down, and there was an F-117 outside the window. It was surreal seeing that airplane on about a 3/4 moon night. So it's fairly lit up, and it's just out there, and it wobbles. Okay, they call it the wobbly goblin because it's got this computer flight control system, and you can kind of see it just kind of floating out here like this. It was really weird, but folks, it was surreal. And the moon was high above and behind the F-117. So every time the pilot in the cockpit moved, we could see his movement. It was all in silhouette, and we could see him like take his maps and throw them up on the instrument panel, and see him, look down at us like this and do some stuff and look down at us like this and everything. Well, if you think that's surreal, go to the back. And John says, seriously, you really need to go to the back. So the F-117s, the six of them, there was two on each tanker, the three tankers, left. 35 minutes later, they came back. And I thought, 35 minutes. I keep seeing that. My second flight saw the same thing. All right. So when we dropped them off at the border of Iraq and Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm, that's exactly how long it would take to go to Baghdad or their targets, drop their bombs, and come back to the tanker. Was 35 minutes. So they were mirroring and rehearsing the airstrikes that they were going to do. Now, from the back, it was even more impressive. You see these a red and green flashing light coming at you like this. Because again, the airplane's black, you can't see it. But as it would get close to what's called our air refueling floodlight that was on the tail of the KC-135 and sticks out a ways, and it's this floodlight that you can turn this rheostat up and down that allows you to see what you're refueling at night. The airplane came into that, and I just went, oh my gosh. And my boom operator was saying over the interphone, this is the cat's ass. This is the cat's ass. Because it was just so surreal. And then what was really cool was watching the air refueling receptacle roll over and expose itself. It doesn't have a door. The B2 has the same thing. The air refueling receptacle rolls over like this. And Mikey and I just looked at each other, my boom operator, just like, oh, this is so cool. This is so cool. And so I watched two F-117 refuelings. They were taking about 6,000 to 8,000 pounds. And it was just one of the, folks, there's missions that you remember. that have burned an impression in your brain, and you will go to your grave with that impression burned into your mind. And that very first mission, refueling the F-117s, and Mike Jam, thank you for bringing this up, is indelibly burned into my memory. I have several flights that I will never forget, and this was one of them. Absolutely one of the most surreal missions I've ever flown. And then um, the next mission, how we would prepare to refuel the F-117 is you would do what's called an over the shoulder, where your crew watches another crew fly the mission. But my co-pilot and my navigator had both been in the busy Spartan program back in the States, flying out of, I think, March Air Force Base. And so they already knew all of this. And that was one of the reasons we got chosen to do this. So the next mission, we were in the seats. My co-pilot, Kenny, me, uh, Kevin at the nav table, Mikey, my boom operator, getting contacts and everything. So we were flying the mission, which was, again, just surreal. I flew about 7 or 8 of these, and during a shuffle of all the air refueling assets and replanning, we realized that the KC-135A models with the old engines did not have the offload capacity to do these long range, wait for the F-117s to go up and return. But the KC-135R models with the new CFM56 engines did. So we moved from King Khalid in Riyadh to King Abdulaziz International at Jeddah. That international airport, as far as I know, we had 104 tankers on the ramp on the opening night of the war. That is the most tankers, as far as I know, that were placed on one ramp in a combat situation. Guam came close during the Vietnam War, and I understand they were in the high 80s, low 90s. But for a very short period of time, we had 104 tankers on the ramp. Everything from KC-10s, KC-135E models from the Guard and Reserve, and then a whole ramp of 36 KC-135A models. These are the engines that burn water, okay? The old J57 engines. And believe it or not, the J57 engine was really a huge leap in technology and won the McKay Trophy for the most outstanding aviation event for, I think, 1955 or 1956. Anyway, Robert Ridley, welcome from Orlando, Florida. My question for this evening is, what was the oldest KC-135 you flew? Great question. I see 8019 on the wall behind you. No. Robert, I've flown a 55 model. We had A models at Pease Air Force Base when I first came in the Air Force, and we had an A model on the ramp at Pease. Actually, I think we had 2 of them that were like real early, 55, 56 models, okay? I came off the assembly line at 57. When I got to Fairchild Air Force Base, Robert, in 1998, 99 timeframe, to stand up the KC-135 Weapons School. I'll talk about that here in just a minute. Fairchild Air Force Base had a couple of 57 models. I think they had 2 February and 1 March 57 models. So those airplanes came off the assembly line just a couple of months before I came off the assembly line. So yes, I have flown older airplanes than 8019. So Robert, you see 8019 here behind me? And this flag, Eric Gattenby, who is on the chat right here, made that for me. It's embroidered. It's beautiful. Eric Gattenby, who's in the chat here, made that for me. 8019 was the jet that I flew the opening night of Desert Storm, refueling the first Wild Weasel package into Baghdad. All right. Hey, Tide, welcome. Got my water with my electrolyte in it. The gentleman that just joined us, Tide, is somebody that I've interviewed on my podcast, Lessons from the Cockpit. So please go find that. I think he's episode number 104, 105. Anyway, very fascinating what he does. And I'll just let you go to Lessons from the Cockpit and you can hear Tide's story. So, Robert, back to you. Um, most of the 55, 56, 57, maybe in 58 models are all gone now. There may be some 59s out there, 60, 61. The last one came off the assembly line in 64. There was 732 of them. And I think right now in the inventory, I think there's 420 or 423, something like that. So, yeah. Tide, while we wait, we hydrate. So, Robert, 638019 was my first combat mission. And again, Eric Gattenby. Eric, are you still on here? He made that for me. This gentleman, Eric Gattenby, that you see here, he just gave the salute. This gentleman is very talented, okay? He's in the middle of writing a book about his experiences being a submariner. And the really cool thing was his older brother was also a submariner, and they were actually on the same submarines. And we have a lot of fun talking back and forth. I don't know if some of you know this, but I have a military writers club that I help people write their military books because of mine. As you can see back here, the book right here, Tanker Pilot, is my book that you can buy on Amazon, but please don't buy on Amazon. Amazon's copies have black and white pictures. I have the only color ones. You guys can just DM me somehow and get a hold of me. All right. Hey, Robert, hopefully that answered your question. Did I answer your question? I've flown in a lot of old airplanes, C-130s, and F-15s too. Mike Jam, do you remember long refueling flights over Iraq? My friend told me they did a 36-hour mission. The bombers, in fact, did that. The B-2 bombers, Mick Jam, would fly from Whiteman Air Force Base to their targets, sometimes would recover in Diego Garcia, sometimes recover back at Whiteman. If I remember right, it was 8 to 9 refuelings, and they would get anywhere between 60 to 80,000 pounds of each offload. When they go to their sim, they stay in their sims for like 12 to 14 hours when they're doing their training, because that's kind of how they do their missions. All right. Joshua, welcome. Live close to Hill Air Force Base. A-10s go by is what it is. Joshua, I am also in Utah. You and I need to meet sometime at the Hill Air Force Base Museum, which is a fantastic museum. K. Roberts, oldest plane I've ridden and jumped from. Jumped? K. Roberts, really? You jumped out of a AN2 Colt? I don't jump out of airplanes. Robert, thank you for the good words on my podcast here. Okay, what was I going to tell you about? Funny story from the B-2. During the air campaign in Kosovo, the B-2s were flying nonstop back and forth between the targets and beautiful Knob Noster, Missouri, outside Kansas City, where Whiteman Air Force Base is. The Walmart in Knob Noster could not figure out why in the middle of the winter, folding lounge chairs are going out the door like crazy. Here it is, Missouri, winter weather, -20, wind blowing, and folding lounge chairs that you have beside your pool are literally flying out the door. This is a true story because I asked a B2 guy, Squirrel was his call sign, and another one, Stinky. Okay. His real name is Brian O'Rear. O'Rear. They call him Stinky O'Rear. And I confirmed this with Squirrel and Stinky. The Walmart manager couldn't understand why he was having to order pool lounge chairs, folding lounge chairs in the middle of the winter. And he saw somebody walking out with a couple of them one day, and he stopped the guy and he goes, "Hey, I got to ask you, where in the world are you taking these lounge chairs? Is there some place you're going uh, to use these things, or you got some beach vacation?" This is what this young gentleman told him. "Sir, I am a B2 pilot. Your folding lounge chairs fold out perfectly over the crew entry door of the B2 bomber. It fits in the space perfectly. All of us have one of these folding lounge chairs, and those who don't are going to have them pretty soon because we refuel every 5 hours, but the 2 to 3 hours where we're going into combat stay pretty busy. But when we're coming back out, again, we refuel every 5 hours. What we do is we'll swap out of the lounge chair. So, mission commander and the other pilot will be in the seats during air refueling, and then like the co-pilot will hop out, lay out, and kind of rest. Get woken up right before refueling, and then the mission commander will hop out, lay on the lounge chair, and rest on the sleeping bag and everything. But but that lounge chair fit perfectly between some bulkhead and over the top of the crew entry door. So if you watch and see B2 crews that are going on these long missions, you'll see that they have this folding lounge chair. Okay. And the next day, when this manager of those Walmart found out that they were there, he had a banner out front that said, "Our lounge chairs are B2 tested," which everybody thought was real funny. Now, I got that story from two different B2 pilots. Okay. And remember, everything we talk about as pilots is only 10% true. Folks, it's been great to be on with you. Uh, yeah, Robert, the 135s will be flying for 100 years. Folks, I apologize to you. We're going to have some of these a lot longer. I have a son who is in town for just a short period of time, and I'm going to go spend some time with him. All right. Um, he just bought some new toys that he's going to show me, and it's going to be fun. All of you, I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for joining me tonight. This is only my second live, so I'm going to do these a lot more. I'm planning on doing them on Thursday nights, 8 o'clock, and having the virtual bar nights. And those of you that have listened to and have read my show notes know that I'm going to do a lot more of these as part of my Patreon All Ranks Club. So please, when you go to the Lessons from the Cockpit show, take a look at my Patreon All Ranks Club. You can just contribute to the show through Venmo. Get a hold of me, DM me. If you'd like to buy a copy of my book, I sell them for $20. I do not make any money on the book. All the money goes to the Airlift Tanker Association. I'm on their heritage committee. I've got the only paperbacks that have color pictures. I've got 500 of them. I've sold 100 of them already. So, folks, thank you for being here with me. Thank you for asking some great questions. Those of you that I've spent some time with on the phone, Eric and others, I appreciate you, brother. I certainly appreciate this banner I've got here behind me of 8019 that Eric made. It's a beautiful piece of work, brother. That's all I got. Next Thursday at 8 o'clock, I may be driving home from Vegas. Again, I will be in Las Vegas next week at the Air Refueling Systems Advisory Group being held at Planet Hollywood. And if any of you want to get a hold of me and are in the Vegas area, please, please, I would love to meet you, shake your hand, maybe sell you a book, and just sit down somewhere at some good restaurant and just talk aviation. Remember, folks, nobody kicks ass without tanker gas. Nobody. Sluggo signing out here. Y'all have a good night. Have a good weekend. Thank you for your questions.